At this time, I think we're ready to get started here. Fred, are you there to give some opening remarks?
Yes. Can you see me?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Brian. Well, it's great to be with everybody. I'm Fred Clare. I'm the managing director for the Urban Future Lab at NYU Tandon. We're part of the one of the three program operator alongside Greentown Labs and Fraunhofer. And I just wanted to say hi. I've been the C2B director for the last 5 years, so it's been really an honor to launch and grow the program and work with awesome 45 alumni. Hopefully, you're going to be the next batch of the year six cohort. And I'm very excited to pass the baton to Brian, who's the new C2V director. And so I'll pass it over to Brian, but just wanted to say a few words. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Fred. Welcome everyone to the Year 6 webinar on the Carbon to Value Initiative. As Fred mentioned, my name is Brian Warfolk, and I lead the Carbon to Value program at the Urban Future Lab at NYU Tandon. My background is in materials chemistry, industrial technology development, and working with startups and large corporates to move emerging technologies towards commercialization. That experience is a big reason why I'm excited to lead the C2V program. The technologies are important, but progress usually depends on finding the right partners, the right application, and the right path to deployment. Today, for the webinar, I'm joined by my colleagues from the Urban Future Lab, Greentown Labs, and Fraunhofer. Fred, who just gave the opening remarks as the managing director of the UFL at NYU Tandon. Myself, director of the Carbon to Value program. We have Jack on the call, who's the program director of C2V. Marina, who's a senior director of external programs at Greentown Labs. And Russ, who should be joining us, who is the director of strategic initiatives at Fraunhofer. Together, we're going to explain what C2V offers, who should apply, the Year 6 technology scope, the program structure, the required commitment, and the application timeline. Throughout the session here today, if you have any questions, please enter those into the Q&A box, and we will answer them at the end. Perfect. So carbon tech is emerging as a critical part of the global decarbonization toolkit. There's no credible path to net zero without capturing, converting, removing, and permanently storing carbon at a massive scale. At the same time, carbon tech has the potential to become a trillion-dollar market as industries look for practical ways to reduce emissions, secure lower carbon feedstocks, and build new products and value chains from carbon. The urgency is clear. Many of the hardest to abate sectors, including chemicals, cement, steel, fuels, and heavy industry, cannot fully decarbonize through renewable electricity alone. They need scalable carbon management solutions, and they need them to move from the lab to commercial deployment much faster. And that's why C2V has two core missions. The first is ecosystem building. Carbon tech is still a relatively young and complex sector. It brings together emerging technologies, capital-intensive infrastructure, new supply chains, and evolving markets. It also depends heavily on policy, regulation, and government support. Clear standards, permitting pathways, incentives, public funding, and durable market signals are all essential to give companies and investors the confidence to move projects forward. Our role is to connect the people, the institutions needed to build that ecosystem, including startups, corporates, investors, researchers, government agencies, policymakers, and nonprofit organizations. Our second mission is fostering partnerships, especially between startups and major corporations. These partnerships are critical to de-risk technologies, finance projects, demonstrate performance, and ultimately deploy solutions at a commercial scale. Large corporates bring industrial sites, engineering expertise, supply chains, customers, capital, and an understanding of what it takes to operate safely and reliably at scale. Startups bring new technology, speed, and a willingness to challenge established approaches. C2V creates a structured environment where these groups can work together, identify the strongest commercial opportunities, and begin building the relationships required to move from innovation to deployment. And we organize that collaboration primarily through the Carbon Tech Leadership Council and through the broader ecosystem building activities delivered through the program. So the Carbon Tech Leadership Council, or CLC, is central to that partnership model. The council is intentionally diverse. It includes energy companies such as Shell and Total, specialty chemical and catalyst expertise from Johnson Matthey, waste and water experience from Veolia, consumer product perspectives from L'Oreal, and engineering and project delivery capabilities from Fluor. It also includes carbon tech investment, policy, and government perspectives through organizations such as Carbon 180, CO2 Value Europe, Energy Impact Partners, and NYSERDA. Now, that diversity matters because a startup may initially think it needs a customer when it more immediate need is a feedstock partner, an engineering study, catalyst validation, a host site, an offtake pathway, or insight into how a business unit evaluates a first project. The CLC organizations commit senior sponsors as well as people from their technical teams, innovation, strategy, investment, sustainability, and operating business units. The program gives startups a framework to engage with those people in a very focused way. For applicants, the opportunity is to pressure test your value prop across different parts of the value chain, learn where the strongest commercial pull exists, and build a deeper relationship than what you might gain from a single intro meeting. Our goal is to help you find the right partners faster and avoid spending years pursuing the wrong market or application. We have now completed 5 cohorts, and we have meaningful evidence that this model creates results. The C2V program has supported 45 startups that help generate more than 800 new business relationships. Those relationships include prospective customers, technical collaborators, investors, project developers, suppliers, and other value chain partners. The companies have collectively raised more than $700 million, and the program has created access to more than 120 investors. More importantly, those connections have moved into concrete commercial activity. Cohort companies and CLC members have explored 22 pilot projects, 27 potential joint development agreements, licensing agreements, POs, investments, or JVs, and have publicly announced 13 partnerships. We're also proud that 57% of the companies have diverse founding teams. I will not view these numbers as a promise that every conversation immediately becomes a pilot or investment. Carbon tech commercialization takes time. Some of the most valuable outcomes occur earlier in the journey, such as identifying a better beachhead market, understanding a customer requirement, finding a technical weakness before a pilot, or learning that a planned business model is not going to work. Those insights can save startups significant time and money. The larger point is that C2V is built around action and relationships, not just education or exposure. This slide shows the 45 startups that have participated across 5 years of the program and really illustrates the breadth of the carbon tech ecosystem that we support. The portfolio includes point source capture, direct air and ocean capture, conversion to fuels, materials and chemicals, mineralization, biomass and biochar, and enabling technologies. Some companies are developing individual materials or components, while others are building integrated systems or complete projects. That breadth is intentional. A functioning carbon economy needs more than just one technical pathway. It needs connections across capture, processing, conversion, storage, products, and eventually the end markets. It also creates value within the cohort itself. Founders can learn from companies across the value chain facing similar scale-up, financing, project development, and customer adoption challenges, even when their underlying technologies are very different. In fact, last year, we had members of the Year 5 cohort execute a joint project together in Africa. Now, those numbers become more meaningful when we look at a few specific examples. The first is Carbon Free and Fluor. Carbon Free entered C2V program with an emerging mineralization technology and an existing conversation with Fluor. But the program helped both sides deepen the relationship and establish confidence that they could work together over the longer term. In 2021, they announced a partnership to commercialize Carbon Free's second generation mineralization technology. Fluor then helped Carbon Free identify an opportunity with US Steel. In 2024, Carbon Free secured a definitive agreement to develop a first-of-a-kind project valued at $150 million designed to mineralize 50,000 tons of CO2 per year. Now, second example is Airco. Carbon Direct was able to get to know Airco's technology and the team through the C2V program and went on to lead the company's $30 million Series A in 2022. That outcome demonstrates the value of giving an investor sustained access to a company rather than just relying on a single pitch meeting. And a third example here is carbon upcycling and CRH. C2V helped to strengthen their collaboration, which contributed to CRH participating in carbon upcycling's 27 million Series A round and a project to install the company's technology at Ashgrove Cement facility in Canada. Now, there's several other examples across the portfolio, including major sustainable aviation fuel offtake agreements, commercial carbon capture installations, large project grants, and later stage fundraising. Now, not every C2V relationship will produce a public announcement, and the most important ones may result well after the formal accelerator ends. What the program can do is accelerate trust, technical diligence, commercial discovery, and access to decision makers. Those are the foundations required to turn a promising carbon tech innovation into a deployable business. With that overview of the initiative, the Leadership Council, and results from the first 5 cohorts, I can now hand it over to Jack to walk through the program partners and the rest of the details for year 6.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. My name is Jack Fritzinger. I'm one of the program managers at the Carbon Value Initiative, and thanks, Brian, for the overview. I'll start by sharing a bit more context around these 3 organizations: Urban Future Lab, Greentown Labs, and Fraunhofer USA. Together, our 3 organizations collaborate closely to design, execute, and manage the C2V initiative. UFL and Greentown co-lead the program design and execution, while Fraunhofer uses its R&D and technical expertise to advise the initiative on programmatic design and startup evaluation. Between the 3 of us, there's a wealth of experience in startup incubation support, in research and technical expertise, and of course, in past program experience from our last 5 years running this initiative. The mission with the Carbon Value Initiative is really to support startups, to help you connect, convene, collaborate with one another, and also with the corporates who are part of our Carbon Tech Leadership Council. We're in the business of supporting entrepreneurs, and the numbers on this slide illustrate this. UFL has supported companies who have raised over $4 billion. Greentown Labs offers over 130,000 square feet of space for startups to operate in and has incubated over 700 startups, raising billions of dollars. And Fraunhofer brings a robust history of industry expertise, startup research support, and has over 80 research institutes around the globe with 30,000 staff members and a $3.5 billion research budget. So you'll be well supported between these 3 organizations. A quick overview of our objectives in the C2V program. First and foremost, the accelerator program is designed to help startups bridge the gap between technology development challenges of today and the carbon tech market and policy landscape of tomorrow. We don't just want you to advance your TRL. We want to help you build new commercial and value chain relationships that will take your company to the next level. Second, startups will gain market insights and explore collaboration opportunities with CLC members. Brian alluded to some of those in a previous slide of some of the past partnerships we've seen within C2V. But specifically, you'll have opportunities to hear firsthand from CLC members about their carbon tech strategies, to present to them directly, and to access experts and industry knowledge from within the participating corporations. Finally, you'll gain access to our entire network of investors and partners, as well as resources from UFL, Greentown Labs, and Fraunhofer, and I'll explain what those are in a bit more detail in a moment. From start to finish, the program is about 6 months long, though we maintain close ties with program alumni, and we do our best to support after the program ends. For each cohort, we typically accept 8 to 10 startups, looking for a mix of technologies across the areas listed in our innovation scope. So jumping into the application process, which of course we're in the midst of now, a few of the things we're looking for and things that make you eligible for applying to the program. The first is stage. We're encouraging startups that are between TRL levels 4 and 7 to apply. We're willing to discuss with startups that see themselves as a bit earlier or later than this TRL range to see if you're a fit. So reach out to us if you think you fall outside of this range. Second is objectives. We want companies who are actively investigating product market fit and seeking partnerships. The third is there's no minimum or maximum funding limit. That means no matter how much or how little you've raised in the past, you are still eligible for the program. And finally, we want the C2V program to have global reach, so we strongly encourage applications from outside the US. In addition to these criteria, we are evaluating applications based on your technology, your traction so far, the partnerships you've amassed, your team, vision, and your climate impact. You'll see these criteria reflected in the questions from our application. Now, I alluded to the innovation scope, which appears in the RFP. So let's talk about the technologies that are in or out of scope for this year's program. These categories are not exhaustive. If you have a novel carbon tech innovation that falls outside of these descriptions, but is not explicitly listed as out of scope, we encourage you to reach out to us and consider applying. With that, here are the three categories for this year's tech scope. The first is carbon capture, which includes point source capture, direct air capture, gas separation technologies, and AI and ML enabled approaches that improve carbon capture, gas separation, purification, or upgrading technologies. You can find more details on that in the RFA, which is linked on our website, and we'll share it out here as well. The second category is carbon conversion to value-added products. That would be CO2 and other carbon-rich streams to fuels, to chemicals, to materials, as well as carbon-rich waste, like waste biomass, municipal, industrial waste, or industrial residues to value via gasification, fermentation, pyrolysis. And finally, AI and ML-enabled approaches here as well that accelerate carbon conversion technologies. The third and final category is carbon sequestration and removal. That would be marine CDR and blue carbon, biomass carbon removal and storage, enhanced mineralization and rock weathering, and again, AI and ML enabled approaches that support carbon sequestration, removal, or durable storage pathways. It's worth noting some of the things that are not in scope for this program. So first, previously established direct CO2 uses, such as enhanced oil recovery, are not in scope. Enabling technologies that solely focus on software, carbon marketplaces, carbon credits, registries, financing, or insurance. We recognize that these are all critical services and products for this industry, but they are not in scope for this year's program. Third, hardware for measurement, reporting, or verification, in other words, MRV, is not in scope for this year. And fourth and finally, standalone software platforms are not in scope unless they are very directly supporting the development, optimization, scale up, or deployment of an eligible carbon tech technology. You can find the full list of all these things I've just read off in the RFA, which is linked on our website. So let's jump into the program benefits for startups that participate. The first is hands-on support from Carbon to Value. That means the three organizations that I described earlier, we will all be supporting you, and each company in the cohort is assigned a program manager like myself from C2V, who will meet with you frequently to check in on progress, make introductions, and help you take full advantage of the program. Secondly, you get an opportunity to collaborate with the CLC. Each startup is matched with two members of the Carbon Tech Leadership Council, which will meet with you throughout the program to provide advice, collaborate on testing, market research, pilots, and commercial agreements. C2V is here to help guide those conversations, but your objectives for the CLC relationships and how you structure your work with them is up to you. In the past, we've had companies receive materials for testing, engage in engineering feasibility studies, launch pilots, sign contracts, gain valuable market intelligence. Basically, you get out of it what you put in. So it's helpful to establish a clear understanding of how and why you want to work with a CLC member. Third is programming. In addition to the virtual meetings with your CTV program manager and advisors, the accelerator consists of 5 major programming moments. The first is the kickoff, where you'll meet your fellow cohort members, as well as the CLC, and start to build relationships and prepare for the program. The next 3 are workshops, 2 in person and 1 virtual. Workshops are typically 2 to 3 days and consist of learning sessions with guest speakers, peer-to-peer support sessions, investor matchmaking, in-person meetings with CLC members, and collaborative breakouts and roundtables. We'll talk a bit more about the program content in a moment. Last but not least, we have our final showcase. It's an in-person opportunity to share your progress, pitch next steps to the CLC and to our wider network. We typically invite about 100 to 150 investors, corporates, partners, and other key stakeholders to this final showcase event. Fourth, and finally, network. As a member of the cohort, you'll gain access to our entire network, resources from the Urban Future Lab, Greentown Labs, and Fraunhofer, as well as membership at one or both of Greentown and UFL. To go a little bit deeper on that last point, what does that look like to get membership at these organizations? Well, membership at Greentown Labs grants you a free optional desk for the duration of the program at either our Boston or Houston incubators, as well as access to over $1 million of in-kind resources, collaboration opportunities with over 80 corporate partners, discounted software tools such as SolidWorks and Aspen Tech, and pro bono legal services, just to name a few. You'll also have access to the Climate Tech Expertise Network, which is a program out of Columbia Technology Ventures and is funded by NYSERDA. It gives you access to more than 80 experienced professionals with over 20 years of business experience, and it's a mentorship program that's free for you and is geared towards helping you grow your business in New York if you choose to do so. Here are a few examples on the programming side of the kind of content you can expect at those 3 workshops that I mentioned. We've had a lot of sessions that we've hosted over the years, but just picking out a few, we've invited Breakthrough Energy Catalyst in the past to talk about scaling up. We've had Fluor come in, which is a large engineering, procurement, and construction firm, to talk about building first of a kind commercial scale projects. We've invited dozens of investors to come speak, but a few are from Braemar Energy Ventures, Azola, Aramco. We do corporate discovery groups with our Carbon Tech Leadership Council. So these are kind of internal roundtables and working groups with the CLC. Spring Lane has come in to talk about project finance. And we always love to invite in founders from carbon tech companies who are further along in their journeys to share some lessons. So we've had Fervo come and speak, Syzygy, Infinium, again, just to name a few. So what does it look like to join the program? What's the commitment on your side? Well, the program is free to participate in. We don't take equity from companies and there's no cost to apply. We do, however, ask that participants be involved at the founder, C-suite, or strategic upper management level. That means you're having one of these senior employees or founders attending all relevant events and engaging at all program touchpoints. Active participation is required throughout all programming, which equals a commitment of about 80 hours over the course of 6 months. As I mentioned earlier, our 5 largest programming moments include the kickoff, the 3 workshops, and the final showcase. All of them are in person in the United States, with the exception of one virtual workshop. Outside of these formal program events, you will also have virtual meetings with your CLC advisors, your C2V program manager, and other program stakeholders. So be prepared to be engaged. Time and time again, the old saying is proven true. The more you put in, the more you get out. And we find that's the case with almost all of our cohort companies. 2 very important notes. While there's no fee to participate in C2V, in-person attendance at program events is a requirement, and you're expected to cover your travel and accommodation costs to come to those events. We do have potential financial support of up to $10,000 per company that may be available on a discretionary basis to help cover travel and accommodations, but it's not guaranteed with your acceptance into the program. Here's a quick look at that program timeline. We are currently accepting applications with an August 28th deadline to apply. We will then go through 2 rounds of down selection, including some finalist interviews, and we will select 8 to 10 startups. Programming kicks off at the beginning of December in Houston with our kickoff event. We then have the 3 workshops that I mentioned in New York, then a virtual workshop, and then in Boston. And then the final showcase wraps up the program and takes place at the beginning of June in New York. Lastly, here's a look at our team. You heard from myself and Brian, but there's an amazing group as well behind the scenes here. Marina is on the call. I know Russ is here too, and Jess is out on parental leave, but will be back soon and is excited to hop in for this next cohort. So that's the team behind the Carbon to Value initiative. And at this point, we are excited to open it up to questions. So I'll pass it back to Brian.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. So it looks like we have 3 questions in the Q&A thus far. So I can kind of go through each of them and have our team members answer some of these questions. If you have any questions on the program, the application, anything at all, please enter it into the Q&A and we will get to your questions. So the first, actually, I want to skip the first question. The next question is, can team members include foreign entities from UK, EU, and Asia? And yes, yeah. So your team can be a global team. That's completely fine. There's another question here. If a systems approach includes more than one focus area? Do you suggest breaking it into two applications? Each subsystem is at TRL 4 to 7, but the system as a whole plus balance of plant has not yet been demonstrated. So my take on that is I would focus on doing one application. You can mention both of the sub focus areas, but it'd be much better to just have one application applied to the program. Marina, do you have any context to add?
No, I think that was great, Brian. Sorry, I just put answer live. It looks like I have
Yep.
an answer, but you got it.
Perfect. All right. I have a question from Warren here. Is there any way for us to see what the CLC members' priorities are, or how they tend to provide support during the program? So I can start a little bit, and then maybe I'll let Marina add to my answer there. So um, the CLC members' priorities we have taken into account with the request for application. We met with them in June and have followed up with them to make sure that the request for application and the startups are aligned with their needs. They do have some more specific requirements, and we are scouting for those needs. And so, if you have a startup technology that aligns with the request for application, there's corporate members on our CLC that are looking for those technologies. Now, the support throughout the program, Jack mentioned that there's mentoring, and so there's usually a key mentor from CLC, often two CLC members you'll be partnered with, and to develop partnership opportunities through that. Marina, I'll let you add on to my answer there.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And yeah, this is a good question. And of course, it's going to depend on who the CLC member is. They can offer a variety of support through that mentorship that Brian mentioned. And as you'll see on the CLC member list, there's a wide variety of like types of companies that the CLC members are made up of. And when each company, each startup is allowed into the program, they'll sit down with the advisors from the CLC members that they're assigned to, and those advisors will work together with you to figure out what type of support they can provide you. That's going to depend on what their internal capabilities are. So, of course, for example, Floor, they're an EPC, so they might be able to help you with like engineering scale up constraints and things like that. Whereas maybe a JM of sorts who has a lot of like chemical testing capabilities, and they might be able to help you with that kind of work. But it's the cool thing about C2V is that it's totally different. It's a different journey for every startup that joins the program, and it's going to really be a unique situation between each CLC member that you work with. And if you have questions about specific CLC members that you're interested in learning more about, I would recommend that you reach out to one of us so that we can talk more about your specific situation and what we've seen the CLC members help with throughout the years and what those kind of opportunities could be.
Perfect.
Back to
Thanks, Marina. Perfect. Next question I have here from Pedro is, does the program offer support for techno-economic analysis? Not directly, but there's a couple things from here. So definitely some of the companies like Floor and others in part of the program do offer these services. They're not typically in kind, but it's up for you to kind of work with the CLC member to work through that. The other resource that we do have access to is the Climate Tech Expertise Network, CUN through Columbia. There's one-on-one expert mentorship through the program, and there's also some potential for grants that can support the techno-economic analysis. And so not directly through the program, but part of the overall ecosystem, we can provide some support for those types of analyses. So next question from Sophia. Was wondering if your network is primarily in the US or if you have strong ties to other geographies as well. So for that one, our CLC members are global and focused, majority of them. When the CLC member comes together, there's quite a few that do come in from Europe. And on the carbon tech expertise side, we are, partnered with CO2 Value Europe as well. And so we are really looking at a global focus for application, both for the startups and the potential commercialization areas. We've had startups from all continents, almost all continents applied to the program. We've had pilots and projects done in Africa. There's a fair bit of a presence into Canada and Europe as well. And so the network as well as the focus is meant to be global in focus. Next question here is from Gavin. If a technology is not TRL4, what criteria do C2V look for to strengthen the application? So for that one, I'm going to bounce it back to Marina.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And sometimes, since we've run this program for a few years in a row, we've seen companies that sometimes apply when they're a little bit early, and then they are able to advance their TRL a little bit and apply at a later year and then get accepted. That's actually happened to several companies that have participated in cohorts in the past. And I think this was maybe talked about a little bit during the presentation, but we're really looking for companies who have maybe already established like a small pilot and they're kind of ready to engage with corporate partners or maybe able to produce a sample and are like well past the bench scale at that point and ready to embark on slightly larger projects. I mean, if you think about it, all the CLC members are kind of larger corporates and depending on the CLC member, some of them might have capabilities to engage with slightly earlier companies, but that typically is pretty difficult, which is why we encourage companies that are a little bit further along to really make the most out of this program and be able to embark on more successful partnerships.
Awesome. And just adding to that, to Marina's response there, our CLC members are coming in activated, looking to do business with the startups. They're not passive participants by any means. They want to get engaged with the startups. That's why they're participating in the program. They're looking for pilot opportunities. They have critical business needs and problems that they're looking to solve through participation in this program. And so the TRL 4 to 7 tends to be a good spot where the startups are ready to activate and to form partnerships with some of our corporates. So those are all the questions that have been put into the Q&A thus far. If you have any other questions, it's a great opportunity to answer any questions you have right now. So there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Enter any questions that you have. Okay, we have a next question here from Ed. Can one assume that all of the CLC interactions will be virtual and the in-person mandatory meetings provide the opportunities for face-to-face catch-up? So all of the in-person interactions, we have the CLC members come to the events as well. And so there will be a mixture and balance of both virtual interactions as well as face-to-face in person through some of our actual programming. It's critical with the actual kickoff to make those connections at our kickoff event and then to continue to move along and to develop those relationships through the program in both a combination of virtual and face-to-face. But it's like we said, it's really, we help to make those connections and foster it through the program. But it's really up to the startups themselves to continue to reach out, build that relationship with the corporate in order to maximize the value from the program. Another question here from Samsa. Could you please elaborate on what kind of in-kind support research institutions might provide to startups during the accelerator program? I can bounce back to Marina, but does someone on the team want
Yeah,
to answer that one?
I
Yep.
think so Samsa, are you in terms of research institution, I'm assuming you mean Fraunhofer, and for that, I'm going to ask Russ to step in and ask what kind of in-kind support you guys offer because Greentown Labs and Urban Future Lab, we're incubators, we're not really research institutions, so I'm going to assume you meant Fraunhofer, and if you didn't, please type another question. But Russ, over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. Happy to take that one. So this is an interesting one because there's a bit of work to be done, for any research service. And so we offer a lot of in-kind, let's say, consulting that would lead to a research engagement. So when it comes to, helping companies look at plans to scope and scale their technologies or to further develop them, along the TRL spectrum, that is something we definitely offer as far as, life cycle analysis, techno-economic analysis. We have teams that can do that. But we do not offer, run those services completely in kind. It's just too expensive. But we are a nonprofit organization, and we're happy to kind of do all of the setup to run those types of initiatives or programs with the startups for free and in kind. That's something that we offer, and we have looked at having some of those things done with the corporates and the startups together to further evaluate them. So there are opportunities there. And then we also have the network of universities, every front offer facility globally, of which we have over 100, is part of a different university. So when it comes to research organizations outside of front offer as well, we have connections to many, many university partners, as well as national labs or the equivalent of national labs in other countries. So we have access to networks of research institutions where potentially you can find kind of the, let's say, easiest or cheapest way to get the research or technology development that you're looking for. Hopefully that answers your question.
Perfect. Thanks, Ross. There's a question that Marina, I think, responded to in the chat there, and had to do with the CLC members and whether you kind of mention or select CLC members during the actual application. So there's a couple questions and opportunity to speak to what CLC member you think would be a good partner for your company. So one of the questions is, what program benefits or connections are you looking to leverage through the C2V initiative to advance your company goals? So you can kind of begin to focus on what segment or what area of CLC member would be a good fit. And then there's a very specific question. Please list and explain what partnership opportunities you'd like to pursue with specific members of the CLC through C2V, and be specific as possible. And so the CLC members are quite engaged in the down selection and the overall selection process of the cohort companies. And so they are specifically looking for startups, and they go through these applications in great detail, not just the main CLC members, but down to the business unit level as well. So looking through it and trying to see, what startups would they like to work with, which ones do they think solve critical business needs. And so the more that you can speak to a specific CLC member and a corporate and how you'd like to work with them, how it would be beneficial to both parties, yourself as well as the corporate, that is really helpful to help your application stand out and to really connect with that corporate. So, question from Warren. Is it common for startups to apply with an interest in technical support rather than customer partnership? So for that one, I can maybe start on that one. So the two main goals of the program is the ecosystem development and kind of building that ecosystem for the carbon tech. And the second one is really forming those partnerships. Now, it may not always be a customer partnership, but it could be part of the value chain, a different feedstock, different projects, some of the engineering that needs to get done in order to actually deploy your technology. And so I would definitely look at coming to the program with a need and a major drive to form partnerships with the corporates. I think that's one of the largest values from the program. I've been in the startup space before. I've been a founder. I've been in the corporate side, and being able to bridge that gap is one of the unique parts of this program. And so I'd really, in evaluating, whether to submit an application, a major part is really being able to look to forming partnerships with our corporates on the CLC, and by doing that, to deliver value and essentially unlocking new opportunities for yourself in order to accelerate the commercialization. So definitely, yes, there's some interest in the technical support, but really a big focus on forming partnerships. Marina, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I will just emphasize what you said. Like, definitely don't apply to this program if all you're looking for is technical support, because that's not really what the CLC is going to be geared to doing for you. Like, they're not here to just do that. They're here to find companies that they can engage with through a collaborative way. So if what all you're looking for is technical support and not partnerships, I don't think that that's a great fit. But everything that Brian said is super in line. Back to you, Brian.
Perfect. Thanks, Marina. Question here, I'm going to send this one to Jack. I'm going to read it here. Would something like waste plastic recycling via pyrolysis or gasification to carbon-based products fit this cohort?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's part of the like carbon waste streams to value part of our tech scope. So yes, that falls within the scope for this program.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. Next question here from Monica. Typically, do companies engage with a few, 1, 2 CLC members, or do they go broad and engage with more? In the application, I believe we're asked what's our fit with the members. So I wonder if it's more beneficial to expand on a selected few or show the connection with several members more broadly. And so in the actual program, you'll be connected with 1 to 2 CLC members. Now, there's lots of opportunities for networking and for meeting all of the corporates that are going to be there. So we definitely would encourage you to network and build relationships with all the corporates in the program, but you're going to have a better fit with 1 to 2 of the CLC members. And since there's limited time, and I would definitely focus more so on, what of the two to four, for example, CLC members would be the best fit for your company in terms of both value for the startup as well as potential value in terms of solving a critical business challenge for the corporate as well. So yeah, I would not in the application go through all 6 to 8, but really focus on the ones that are most critical to your company. Question here from Ed. Does the application have minimum thresholds for TAM, SAM, forecast, US alone, US, and global? And so I can begin to answer this. Maybe Marina, you can add some context. So it's a global program. But you can be commercializing and focused on any global market. So you don't have to, if you're a company in Europe, for example, you don't have to have a US commercialization pathway. It's really what's best for your business. So I would not change your go-to-market strategy or beachhead just based on this application, since we are global focused. Does the application have minimal thresholds for TAM and SAM? I'm going to say no. You want to be, of course, working in a segment that can create value for the corporates on our CLC. And just in this sector, a lot of that tends to have, very large TAMs and SAMs. But so we don't have a minimum threshold for that, but just more so in being able to unlock value for the corporates as well as for the startups in the program. If anyone on the team wants to add context to that, but I think that's pretty much it. So no minimum threshold there. So at this point, we have answered all the questions. If you have any other last remaining questions, please enter it into the Q&A at this time. Otherwise, Jack, do you want to speak to some of the upcoming office hours that you're hosting?
Absolutely. So each week we are hosting an hour of office hours. I'm hosting those, and you are welcome to sign up. I can drop a link in the chat here in just a moment, but it's a good opportunity if you have additional questions or want to go a little bit deeper, you can sign up for an office hours and come chat with me. We will also be sharing the recording for this webinar if you want to go back and access some of the information. There's a bunch of information in the request for applications, which you can find linked on our website, which is the Carbon to Value Initiative. And then there's a link in there for year 6, and that's where you can find all the relevant information for this upcoming cohort. And we continue to send around emails and reminders and other links for helpful information as we go. Plus, you can check out our social media channels for both Urban Future Lab and Greentown Labs for more info. The last thing I'll note quickly on this little spiel is August 28th. That is the date to remember. That is the application deadline. It is great if you get your application in before then, but don't get it in any later. That's the cutoff.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. And Jack's also sending out a series of different emails. If you have any specific questions, feel free to respond to those emails. You can connect with me either through LinkedIn, or you can message us or anyone on the team here if you have any specific questions as you get to completing those applications. So at this point, I haven't seen any other Q&A, so I think we can wrap up the session for today. We really look forward to reviewing and seeing all of your applications. And again, seriously consider applying, assess your startup's fit for the program, and really be in the need for unlocking partnership opportunities with our corporates to accelerate commercialization in the carbon tech sector. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Thanks to my fellow panelists from Greentown Labs, UFL, and Fraunhofer. And again, we really look forward to reviewing your applications. Reach out if you have any questions. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.